Sweet home, Santa Barbara, where the skies are so blue. Sweet home, Santa Barbara, what's worked for me can work for you.
Welcome back, friends, to Sweet Home Santa Barbara. I'm your co-host, Jonathan Robinson, and we have a special guest today, which we will be introducing in just a minute, Dave Thomas. But before we talk to Dave, I want to say hello to my co-host,
Scott Williams. Hi, Jonathan.
Should be an exciting episode today because we have a true expert, and I thought that you could give a little bit about Dave Thomas's background.
Yes, indeed. I met Dave more than 25 years ago, and he was already very established in the trade of buying homes in Santa Barbara, fixing up, reselling, very specialized in that. And I asked Dave a little bit about how he got started in this, and he was very interested in homes way back into his early life. As a child, he did designs, and he got very involved with the whole idea of homes. And then after college, he got an opportunity to buy his first home and resell it. And we're going to talk to him about that. Dave has fixed up and resold more than 185 homes in the Santa Barbara area. As far as I know, that is a record. I know of no other person or organization, for that matter, other than a builder building new homes, that's done anything like that kind of numbers. So Dave, welcome to Sweet Home Santa Barbara today.
Thanks, Scott.
Well, Dave, I'm not an expert in this field, so I'm really curious how you got into fixing up and selling homes.
You know, I don't think I really intentionally started with that in mind. I got a master's degree in English Lit. I wanted to come back and live in Santa Barbara again, so I came back. I'd always wanted to fix something up, I think. But when I bought my first house, I really fell in love with the place, and I really didn't want to sell it. But I borrowed the money from my dad. I paid $29,500 for my first house, and I had to pay him back. So I either had to go back into teaching to try and pay him back slowly or sell the property. And I realized that I enjoyed the process of fixing it up. And I knew that unless I sold the first house, I couldn't go on to anything else because I'd just be stuck with that. So that's kind of how it started. Came across a little ad in the newspaper for a little English cottage that was for sale. Called the real estate agent late one evening. She showed it to me the next morning, and I wound up buying it. And the couple that I sold it to, in 1973, is still living in that house.
Wow.
They're the original owners. They've never sold it, and it's on a little lane off Milpa Street on North Mopal. It's a really sweet little English cottage, and they're still there.
I bet it's worth more than $29,000 nowadays.
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah. Yeah, I could actually make the payment on that house by renting out bedrooms and substitute teaching and driving a taxi cab. And between all those, I was able to make a payment. You could never do that today with that limited source of income because I was spending my time fixing the house up whenever I could. So that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So you started out as part-time, but
yeah.
How long was it part-time for you?
It took me about 5 or 6 months to fix up the first house and sell it. And then by the time I bought the second house, I was pretty much devoted to working on that full time. And that took probably another 6 months to sell. The second house was up on Miramonte Drive, and they had a really wonderful view looking down the coastline. But it was all beat up and overgrown when I bought the house, and you couldn't even see the full potential of the view until we did a lot of tree trimming. All of a sudden, it opened up, and it was really beautiful. I paid, I think, $32,500 for that. I sold it for $60,000, and I thought I died and got to heaven. I'd made so much money. I think it was just under $20,000. But teaching, I made $7,500 that 1 year for a whole year of teaching. So, relative to that, it seemed like it was kind of a home run.
So you've been at this a long time, and I'm surprised you didn't have a building background or a contractor background. So you learned just by doing, or how did you
You know
learn?
what's funny? Before I was waiting to get in grad school. My parents had bought a new home in the Walnut Park area, and I worked for a contractor just doing cleanup, around the track while I was waiting to get in school. And I told him I was interested in buying a house, and I thought since he was a contractor, he would really put me down because I didn't know anything about electricity or plumbing or any of it. And he said something that really encouraged me. And he said, Dave, you can hire those things out. He said, you just need to know what to do. And I thought, I think I have an idea about what to do. And I think I can, take care of the other things. I painted the whole house myself, which was kind of daunting, did all the yard work. I used to put plants in my Volkswagen roof and carry them. I've made numerous runs to the dump, my old Volkswagen Bug. But I was able to hire a few things done, not many because I didn't have a lot of money. But the first house had really good bones, and a lot of it was cleanup and just showcasing what was already there under the surface. And it was the perfect house in retrospect to get started with.
Mm-hmm. So how has it changed? That was a lot of years ago. Do you still go about it the same way, or how do you look at buying and fixing up houses now?
It's different in a lot of ways. I'll give you an example. A house that I paid $180,000 for about 35 years ago in Montecito, a little cottage on Lolina Lane, came on the market for $4.9 recently. That's $4,900,000. I sold it after I fixed it up for $295,000. And it went into overbid, and I saw it close last week for $5,300,000. If I were starting today, I could never afford to buy that house, even to start with. Even if I paid, a bargain on it to start would probably be $2.5 or $3 million. How do you come up with that kind of money? When you're a young kid. So That's a huge change point. The house my parents bought in the Sunshine Tract off Walnut Lane, where I grew up, they paid $14.5 for it. My dad thought he'd really hit a home run when he sold it for $22.5. I just saw one close on San Lorenzo, which is the street I grew up on, for $1.2 million something. That's a little Goleta tract house that is 60 years old. And it was probably in fairly original condition. Again, if you had to come up with a down payment, even a modest down payment would be 20% if it's non-owner occupied or whatever they want to define it as. That's $200,000 or more. And you'd have an $800,000 mortgage you have to qualify for. So it's a big game changer, the price of properties now. It's a whole different thing. Mm-hmm. Now I have, a credit line. I've, established myself. I have the means to jump in and pay cash for things, which gives me a distinct advantage. But I certainly wouldn't have had that when I was starting.
So now the little guy has a harder time doing this. It's more of a business for people like you who have a track record and some money and can go about it. So when you're thinking of the business part of it, what are you looking for nowadays?
It's still, like you said, a business. I think a lot of people, I had a friend who started and bought a house right after I did because he got kind of excited about it. But he overpaid for the property, did the wrong things, and wound up never doing it again. It's still a business, and you really have to buy right. I think you make a lot of the profit up front. You can only create so much value, and I think you have to be careful about that. And I think, for people trying to get started in Santa Barbara, you better have a benefactor, or somebody who has deep pockets, or you're not going to be able to get started here. The way the market's been appreciating, if you can get in, at least the last couple of years, you could make money while you sleep, just by owning the thing. But if the music stops and you've overpaid, you're in big trouble. So I always have been careful about what I bought, how much I paid for it. So I felt I had a margin going in. So all of a sudden, things started to shift. I could get out of it and not lose my shirt. Because if you want to remain a player, you have to still be liquid and you have to be able to keep doing it. And if you lose all your money, the game's over and you can't do it. And if you love doing it and enjoy it, you just have to be careful that you can continue doing that.
Mm-hmm. Scott, you know a lot about real estate business. I'm wondering if you have any questions about that.
Well, Dave, you talked about that you have, over time, you got a track record. So at some point, banks were willing to back you. Is that what started happening? Or talk about how you started and how that changed.
There was a mortgage lender years ago named Doug Poyero, who I'm sure you probably remember, Scott.
Yes.
And he used to help me, with some of my first loans. And one time he came to me, and this was really nice of him because it cost him future business. He said, Dave, you really need to get a credit line with a bank and get started doing that. And I remember going to Santa Barbara Bank and Trust and applying for a $100,000 credit line. And they turned me down. And I went down the street and got $1 million credit line from another bank, who I won't name, in Santa Barbara. And it shows you how subjective that whole thing is. I mean, I was turned down for 100, got $1 million another. Once I got that credit line, and it's increased since then, it's probably one of their biggest non-secured credit lines that they have. I was able then to buy things much more easily, and I didn't have to get a lot of loans. And sometimes, there are additional expenses in securing loans if you can pay cash. And when I was starting, cash buyers weren't that plentiful, and I don't think it mattered that much. But in a really competitive market, if you're not a cash buyer, you're pretty much out of luck. So today, there have been a number of things I've been able to buy because I could close it in 10 days with cash. And that gave me an advantage over someone who might have to apply for a loan. And so it's been invaluable to have that. And I'm grateful I have been able to work. The bank I work with now is Montecito Bank and Trust, and they understand what I do, and I've had a really good rapport with them.
How many homes did you sell before you had a sufficient track record that a bank could say he knows what he's doing and he knows how to do this and he's going to be able to continue doing this? Where did you cross over there?
I would guess on maybe my 15th house, something like that. I remember at Santa Barbara Bank and Trust, there was this lady who was in charge of lending, and she kept asking me all the time, what is your secondary source of repayment? And I said, I don't have one. I said, my secondary source of repayment is my first source of repayment. It's selling the property. And she just could never get that. And so consequently, that wasn't the bank that I wound up, doing business with long term. Because when you're starting, you just need somebody who thinks, hey, maybe this guy has got a clue as to what's happening. And they reach down and kind of help you out. I mean, they have to protect their own interests, and I get that. But still, Montecito Bank and Trust was willing to reach toward me and get what I was doing. And that's why I've stayed with it. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question that sort of fits into the situation here. In some markets, the market changes, or you've bought a home that maybe is a little bit difficult to sell. Occasionally, it must occur that a house doesn't sell that easily. What do you do?
My father-in-law used to say you can't force the market. And the truth is you can, but the only way you're going to force the market is to reduce the price of your property until you get to, the sweet spot where someone's going to step up and buy it. Amazingly enough, of the 185 properties we've done, I've never lost any money on any house. Our profits have shrunk over what we projected, but we've always been in the black, and I feel really fortunate about that. But there have been times when we went through 2 or 3 price reductions, or the market started to shift quickly, and all of a sudden you realize, wow, we better get serious here, or we're going to get stuck. And so I've always worked with agents and been, I think, a pretty receptive seller. And if we felt like the market was moving contrary to what we wanted to move, we would make quick adjustments. I never wanted to hold out and just see if a year or two out somebody would step up and buy the place. I always felt like we wanted to go on and we wanted to protect our interests. So we wanted to be responsive to the market and read the signs. So it's always been the way it's been. And Scott, when you and I worked together, that's been the way it's been. I know when we had our Harbor Hills, we had to reduce it, I think, once, and we had a fabulous property with an incredible view. But it didn't go right away. And so we nudged it a little bit, and then it went,
And I recall on that one, Dave, we reduced the price and the market responded enough that it actually raised the price back up, not as far as we were, but it did. It went above where we reduced the price to the market.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. One of the funniest properties, Scott, you ever sold me was on Flora Vista. And you called me, and it was two properties that were side by side, and they had numerous infractions with the city, illegal structures galore. And the guy that owned it, remember, lived in Hawaii, and he was on one of those phone lines with like 5 other parties, and he was way out somewhere. It was just a crazy deal. And I remember when I went down to the city, and I told them I bought it, and I was going to tear down some of these structures. They were so excited, because they had just been tagging these people for years. And I guess they could never reach the guy because he lived out in the middle of nowhere. And it was really funny. We finally got that up. And then you listed those, and we sold both of those properties individually, and came out just fine. But the Mesa's always been an extremely good market to work.
Well, if you think about sizing up the market, because you've talked a little bit that you didn't lose money, but you're sizing up the market, what kind of mindset do you put yourself in to think about 6 months out, what the world might be like at that? Where do you stand? How do you figure that out?
Scott, I've never really liked a project that was protracted, that I thought was going to take a lot of time to complete, where maybe I had to get a zoning change or a variance or something like that. That wasn't, a maybe. You just can't put your eggs in a basket where you aren't sure where it's going to go, and you could be denied, and all of a sudden you're in big trouble. It's something that would take a long time to develop. Like, I get calls all the time, and someone will say, well, you can build units on the back, or you could do this and you could do that. But fighting with the city and getting things approved can take a really long time. And a lot can change in a year or two. A lot today could change in a matter of months. I mean, our world right now is extremely volatile. The economy is, really shaky. Inflation's running wild. Interest rates are screamingly high and going higher. I mean, all of those things, you think, what's this going to look like in 6 months or so? So I'm currently in escrow right now on a type of property I haven't done many of. We're doing an Upper East condominium. And the thing I like about it is we can do simple things to that property and really make it shine. It's got shag carpet right now, dated fixtures and things like that, but we can make simple changes. Right now, even waiting for some kind of materials can take a long time. On a property I did in Samarkand this last year, it took 7 months to get the stove. I'd actually sold the property before the stove arrived and had to put a substitute in there. So you just don't want things that right now, at least I don't, that would take a long time, or, as I said, ask for some kind of variance or something that's really out of my control. So I'm looking for things that have simpler solutions and don't involve, as much, serious remodeling. I just don't think right now, for me, it's the time to do that.
That's all really helpful information, Dave. You know a lot of stuff, and we plan to do another podcast with you where we talk specific remodeling ideas and suggestions. Now we know kind of an overview of the business and how you look at things. So if people want more information, I guess that they can contact you, Scott. What's the best way for them to go about contacting you and maybe finding out more about some of Dave's services as well?
You can reach me at scott@scottwilliams.com. And if you have a house that you'd like to sell to Dave, or you'd like to find out if maybe he's the right person to purchase your home, contact me and we'll get hold of Dave and we'll check out the situation.
And we will be talking to Dave Thomas more on future episodes. Thank you for listening to Sweet Home Santa Barbara.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite app. If you know someone preparing to sell their home, please tell them about the podcast. Visit scottwilliams.com to contact me and download the 2 free e-booklets, Is My House Saleable Now? And How Not to Buy a Money Pit. Thank you for listening.